My name is Harper. I'm 26 years old, and 3 months ago, I thought I was living my dream as a professional ballet dancer. I'd spent 15 years perfecting my craft, sacrificing everything for those fleeting moments of grace on stage where the world disappeared and only movement mattered. Now I'm sitting in a physical therapy clinic in Portland, staring at my left ankle wrapped in medical tape, wondering if I'll ever dance again. The injury happened during what should have been my breakthrough performance with the Pacific Northwest Ballet Company. I was playing the lead in their contemporary adaptation of Swan Lake, the role I'd been working toward my entire career. But as I landed a grand jeté in the second act, something in my ankle snapped like a breaking branch. The sound echoed through the theater, followed by my scream and the horrible silence of 2,000 people watching my dreams shatter in real time. My boyfriend Marcus, who's 29 and works as a sports marketing executive, was supposed to be my biggest supporter through this nightmare. We'd been together for 3 years, and he used to come to every performance, bringing roses and telling me how proud he was. But ever since the accident, everything's changed. He's become distant, critical, and increasingly impatient with my recovery process. Before we continue with today's story, if you're as shocked by what's coming as I was, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps me keep sharing these powerful stories that might help someone else recognize the warning signs I missed. The doctors said I'd need at least 6 months of intensive rehabilitation before I could even consider returning to dance, and even then, there were no guarantees. Professional ballet demands perfection. One weakness, one limitation, and your career is over. Marcus seemed to understand this at first, holding my hand during those initial doctor appointments and promising we'd get through it together. But as the weeks turned into months of physical therapy sessions, canceled performances, and financial stress from my suddenly non-existent income, Marcus began showing his true colors. It started with small comments that felt like paper cuts to my already wounded spirit. "Maybe this is a sign you should consider other options," he'd say while I was icing my ankle after a particularly brutal PT session. "You're not getting any younger, Harper. Most dancers retire by 30 anyway." I'd try to explain that 26 wasn't old in the dance world, that plenty of principal dancers performed into their late 30s, but he'd just shrug like my dreams were naive fantasies he was tired of entertaining. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in late September. I'd been at physical therapy for 3 hours, working with my therapist, Dr. Sarachin, to regain the flexibility and strength I'd lost. Every movement was agony, but I pushed through because dancing was who I was. Without it, I felt like a shell of myself. When I limped through our apartment door, exhausted and dripping with sweat, Marcus was lounging on our expensive leather couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up. "How was therapy?" he asked in that bored tone I'd grown to hate. "Painful," I said, collapsing into the chair across from him. "But Dr. Chin thinks I'm making progress. She said if I keep pushing, I might be ready for bar work in another month." Marcus finally looked at me, his expression somewhere between pity and annoyance. "Harper, we need to talk about reality here. You've been at this for 4 months. Your company replaced you. Your savings are gone. When are you going to accept that maybe it's time to move on?" Those words hit me like a physical blow. Move on? This is my career, Marcus. It's everything I've worked for since I was 11 years old. "And look where it got you," he said, gesturing at my bandaged ankle. "Broken and broke. Maybe the universe is trying to tell you something." I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time in months. This wasn't the man who used to video my performances on his phone because he was so proud. This wasn't the person who'd driven me to auditions and celebrated every small victory. This was someone who saw my struggle as an inconvenience, my pain as dramatic weakness. That night, I lay awake listening to Marcus sleep beside me, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I'd lost my ability to dance, my income, my sense of identity, and now I was realizing I'd also lost the person I thought loved me most. The next few weeks revealed just how shallow Marcus's support had always been. When I couldn't contribute to rent because my disability payments barely covered groceries, he made snide comments about freeloading. When I needed him to drive me to appointments because my ankle couldn't handle pressing the brake pedal, he'd sigh dramatically and complain about the inconvenience. But the real revelation came when I discovered what he'd been doing behind my back. I was using Marcus's laptop to apply for part-time administrative jobs, swallowing my pride to find any income while I healed, when I accidentally opened his email instead of the browser. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. There were dozens of messages between Marcus and a woman named Veronica Shaw, a marketing coordinator at his company. They weren't just work emails, they were intimate, flirtatious exchanges that had been going on for months. Messages talking about weekend getaways I thought Marcus was taking for work. Photos of dinners at expensive restaurants I'd never seen. But the message that destroyed me was from just 3 days earlier. Can't wait to finally be free of all this drama. She's so needy and depressing now. The injury was actually a blessing. It showed me who I really want to be with. Just need to figure out the cleanest way to end things. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands shaking as the full scope of his betrayal sank in. While I'd been fighting for my life's work, grieving the loss of everything I'd built, Marcus had been planning his escape with another woman. My injury hadn't just ended my dance career, it had revealed that the man I loved saw me as disposable the moment I became inconvenient. I screenshot every message, every photo, every piece of evidence of his double life. Then I carefully closed the laptop and went about my day as if nothing had changed, all while planning my next move. That evening, Marcus came home with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, a gesture that once would have felt romantic, but now seemed like hollow guilt. I thought we could have a nice dinner, he said, setting the containers on our kitchen table. We haven't had much time to connect lately. I smiled and thanked him, playing the role of the grateful girlfriend while my heart hammered with rage and hurt. We ate in relative silence until Marcus's phone buzzed with a text. I watched his face light up as he read it, then saw him quickly set the phone face down. Work? I asked innocently. Yeah, just Veronica with some updates on the Peterson campaign, he said without missing a beat. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily, I wondered how many others I'd missed over the past months. How many times had he looked me in the eye and deceived me while I was at my most vulnerable? After dinner, Marcus announced he was going out for drinks with the team to celebrate closing a big client. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that now felt like a betrayal itself, and told me not to wait up. The moment his car pulled out of our driveway, I sprang into action. I gathered every important document I owned, packed 2 suitcases with essentials, and called my childhood friend Maya, who lived across town. I need help, I told her, my voice surprisingly steady. And I need somewhere to stay tonight. Maya arrived within an hour with her boyfriend, Tyler, and his pickup truck. As we loaded my belongings, I explained everything: the injury, Marcus's abandonment of my recovery, and the discovery of his affair. What a complete piece of garbage, Maya said, her voice trembling with anger. How could he do this while you're healing? Because he never really loved me, I realized out loud. He loved the idea of dating a professional dancer. The glamour, the status, the Instagram photos. But the moment that disappeared, so did his interest. I left a simple note on our kitchen counter. I know about Veronica. Don't contact me. Your things will be at your parents' house. Then I walked out of the apartment we'd shared for 2 years, closing the door on the life I thought I wanted. The next few days were a blur of emotions: anger, grief, relief, and a strange sense of liberation I hadn't expected. Maya let me stay in her guest room while I figured out my next steps. For the first time in months, I wasn't walking on eggshells around someone's mood. I wasn't being made to feel guilty for my injury or my struggle. I could focus entirely on healing. Marcus called 7 times that first night. He sent texts ranging from furious to pleading to manipulative. You're overreacting. It's not what you think. I was confused because of all the stress. You're throwing away 3 years over a mistake. I blocked his number after the final message, You'll regret this. No one else is going to want damaged goods." Those words stung, but they also crystallized something important. Marcus saw my injury as damage that decreased my value. A man who truly loved me would have seen it as a challenge we'd face together, not a reason to shop for my replacement. 3 weeks after leaving Marcus, something unexpected happened that changed everything. I was at physical therapy, working through my usual routine with Dr. Chen, when she introduced me to a new patient. "Harper, I'd like you to meet Elena Rodriguez. She's a former principal dancer with the American Ballet Theater who went through a similar ankle reconstruction 2 years ago." Elena was elegant, probably in her early 30s, with the unmistakable posture of a lifelong dancer. As Dr. Chin worked with her, I watched in amazement. Her ankle moved with strength and grace that gave me hope I hadn't felt in months. After our sessions, Elena approached me in the parking lot. "Dr. Chen told me about your injury," she said gently. "I wanted you to know that what you're feeling right now, the despair, the fear that you'll never dance again, I felt all of it. But look at me now." She performed a perfect releve right there on the asphalt, rising onto the balls of her feet with the control and beauty that defined professional ballet. "It took 2 years," Elena continued, "but I came back stronger than before. I'm dancing with the San Francisco Ballet now, and my ankle is actually more stable than it was before the injury. For the first time since my accident, I felt genuine hope." Elena and I began meeting for coffee after our PT sessions. She shared not just the physical aspects of recovery, but the emotional journey, the relationships that didn't survive her vulnerable period, the people who showed their true colors when she needed support most. "The injury was devastating," she told me one afternoon, "but it also revealed who really belonged in my life. My fiancé at the time left me 6 months into recovery. Said he couldn't handle the uncertainty, the medical bills, my mood swings. Best thing that ever happened to me." "How can you say that?" I asked. Elena smiled. "Because it made space for someone who actually deserved me. My husband now is a physical therapist who specializes in dance medicine. He understands my body, my passion, my drive. When I have setbacks, he problem solves with me instead of running away. That's the difference between someone who loves you and someone who loves what you can do for them." As my ankle grew stronger, so did my resolve. I decided to do something I'd never had the courage to attempt before my injury: start my own dance studio focused on rehabilitation and adaptive movement for injured dancers. The idea came to me during a particularly challenging PT session when I watched Dr. Chin work with 3 different dancers, all struggling with career-threatening injuries, all feeling isolated and hopeless. There had to be a space where injured dancers could heal together, where movement could be modified instead of abandoned, where careers could be rebuilt instead of discarded. I spent weeks researching, writing business plans, and reaching out to physical therapists, former dancers, and adaptive movement specialists. The project gave me purpose beyond my own recovery. I was building something that could help other dancers avoid the isolation and despair I'd experienced. 6 months after leaving Marcus, I was ready to share my story and my new venture with the world. I created a social media account documenting my journey from injury through recovery, including the emotional challenges of being abandoned by someone I'd trusted with my vulnerability. I didn't name Marcus or share the details of his affair, but I spoke honestly about how some people reveal their true character when life gets difficult. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of dancers shared their own stories of partners who couldn't handle injury, career changes, or periods of struggle. One video in particular went viral. It showed me demonstrating a modified ballet combination I'd developed for dancers with ankle limitations, explaining how injury could become innovation instead of ending. The video got over 500,000 views in its first week and attracted the attention of several investors interested in funding my studio concept. But the real validation came in an unexpected form. Maya called me one morning, barely containing her excitement. "Harper, you need to see this. Someone posted a video of Marcus at a company party, and well, just look." She sent me a link to a TikTok video filmed at what looked like a corporate event. In the background, clearly visible, was Marcus trying to impress a group of colleagues by criticizing his ex-girlfriend who couldn't handle reality and claiming he'd dodged a bullet when she got injured. The video was posted by someone at his company who recognized the cruel irony of a man in sports marketing mocking an injured athlete. The caption read, "When your coworker thinks a career-ending injury is a personality flaw, this is not the guy you want representing your brand." The video exploded across social media, with thousands of comments calling out Marcus's callousness. His company, which specialized in representing professional athletes, couldn't ignore the public relations nightmare of an employee who mocked injured performers. Within 48 hours, Marcus was terminated. His company released a statement distancing itself from his comments and reaffirming its commitment to supporting athletes through all phases of their careers, including recovery from injury. I didn't feel triumphant watching Marcus face consequences for his cruelty. Mostly I felt sad that someone I'd once loved had revealed himself to be so fundamentally lacking in empathy. But there was also a sense of cosmic justice that his own words had created his downfall. A year after leaving Marcus, I opened Phoenix Dance Recovery in a beautiful converted warehouse space in Portland's Arts District. The studio offers adaptive dance classes, injury rehabilitation programs, and career transition support for professional dancers. On opening day, Elena was there as my first instructor, along with Dr. Chin, who serves on our advisory board. Maya helped cut the ribbon, and my parents, who'd flown in from Minnesota, watched with tears in their eyes as I demonstrated the ankle strength I'd rebuilt over months of dedicated work. But the moment that meant the most came when a young dancer named James walked through our doors. He was 19, a rising star with the Oregon Ballet who'd suffered a spinal injury in a car accident and was told he'd never dance again. His parents had driven 3 hours to bring him to our studio after seeing our story online. As I worked with James on modified movements that honored his body's new limitations while still capturing the essence of dance, I realized something profound. My injury hadn't ended my dance career. It had transformed it into something more meaningful than I'd ever imagined. That evening, as I locked up the studio and headed home to my small apartment, which I loved infinitely more than the place I'd shared with Marcus, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The injury that felt like the end of everything had actually been the beginning of my real life. I thought about Marcus, probably struggling to rebuild his career after his public humiliation, maybe finally understanding what it felt like to have your professional identity threatened. I didn't wish him harm, but I hoped he'd learn something about empathy and resilience from watching his own world crumble. The last thing I did before bed was post a video message to the dancers following my recovery journey. A year ago, I thought my identity was tied to my ability to perform perfect grand jetés and flawless pirouettes. I thought love meant having someone who cheered for my successes, but disappeared during my struggles. I was wrong about both. My identity is my resilience, my creativity, my ability to adapt and grow. Love is someone who sees your value even when you can't see it yourself, who problem solves with you instead of running from your challenges. If you're going through your own injury, betrayal, or life-changing setback, remember this. The people who abandon you during your difficult times are showing you who they really are. Believe them. And then make space for the people who deserve to witness your comeback. The video received thousands of comments from dancers, athletes, and people recovering from all kinds of setbacks. But the one that made me cry came from Elena. Proud of you for turning your pain into purpose. That's what real dancers do. We transform everything into art. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I smiled thinking about tomorrow's classes, the dancers I'd help heal, and the beautiful, unpredictable life I was building on my own terms. My ankles still ache sometimes, and my grand jetés would never again have the height they once did. But I'd learned something more valuable than perfect technique. I'd learned that broken things, when healed with patience and care, often become stronger than they were before. And that was true for ankles, hearts, and lives rebuilt from the ground up. What do you think about Harper's journey from injury to empowerment? Have you ever had someone show their true colors during a difficult time in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation.